Dilip Kumar, Part 12. Getting Back to Mela, released in 1948, I remember driving to Filmistan Studios with S.U. Sunny, discussing the story on the way. When we reached the studio and walked onto the stage, the title song was being played. The description I got from the director of the proposed picturization was absolutely flat. I suggested changes in the situation and the picturization, which were appreciated by the director and Naushad Mia, the music composer. The storyline of Mela was a sketchy one, and having had the good fortune of getting involved in stimulating discussions with such thought provoking writers as Bhagwati Charan Verma, Narendra Sharma, Gyan Mukherjee, and Nabendu Ghosh, I was able to sense the absence of meat in it for the actors, and I felt it had to be brought to the director's attention at the very outset. He agreed with me, which was very good not only for me but for the other artists as well. We had some healthy brainstorming sessions which helped us to add depth and intensity to the story besides logic. We also managed to give the characters more emotional sensitivity and depth. Mela still evokes some wonderful memories of the past that I must share. First of all, it was the first film Agaji watched in a cinema house because Naushad Mia persuaded him to view it. He must have gone for a matinee show with Chacha Umar and one of his friends. He was seated in the front room of our new house in Pali Mala when he returned a little early that day because I had to get some new medicines the doctor had prescribed for my mother and somehow get her to gulp down the mixture she disliked. I greeted him as I always did, and he asked me to sit next to him. Chacha Umar was already seated near him, and he had a mischievous smile playing round his lips. So I wondered what was going on. Then Chacha Umar came out with it. He disclosed they had gone to a cinema house and watched Mela, and it was a revelation that so many people had actually bought admission tickets and had filled the hall. He elaborated that it was a very enjoyable experience and it was incredible that I was right there on the screen behaving and talking very differently and wondered whatever had happened to all the shyness and the reluctance I had shown generally when it came to making free conversations with the opposite sex. He now waited for Agaji to take up the conversation. Agaji looked at me and his expressive eyes showed his concern for something that was going on in his mind. He then said, "Look, If you really want to marry that girl, I can talk to her parents. Just tell me who she is. You don't have to be so unhappy. For a moment, I failed to fathom what was being spoken by both of them. Then it dawned on me that they were speaking about Nargis, the heroine in Mela, carried away as they were by the story and the performances. I could clearly see their inability as first time viewers of a feature film to accept and enjoy it all as make believe. I could not help laughing to myself, but I knew it was an impression I had to correct immediately, lest Agaji and Chacha Umar take steps to find Nargis and put me in an embarrassing situation. Secondly, the picture was memorable for the enduring friendship that began between me and Naushad Mia and between me and Nargis. With Nargis, it was a no holds barred friendship. It was as though we were of the same gender because she was not at all hesitant to join the menfolk in their talks and was not one to be shocked if a personal remark was made in front of her. Her mother, Jatan Bai, had become friendly with Amma and my elder sister due to her frequent visits to our home, and later Agaji came to know Nargis was an actress who feigned emotions while acting with me, and there was nothing but a healthy friendship between us. Nargis was no doubt a very capable actress who was getting better with every film. I could see that she had improved vastly when we were cast in Mehboob Khan's Andaz, released in 1949. It was a delightful experience doing Andaz because Raj Kapoor was there in the film, and it was like the times we spent at Khalsa College when we played soccer. He used to stand red faced in the blazing sunlight, shouting and yelling in Punjabi when I scored a goal for my team. Nargis and Raj Kapoor could bring up the feelings demanded of them, and consequently, they did their scenes with ease. I was able to attain that ease with Madhubala in Tarana, released in 1951, which has remained, for many reasons, one of the films I would count among the memorable ones I have done in the early years of my career. She was a vivacious artist and was so instantaneous in her responses that the scenes became riveting even when they were being filmed. The scenes would move at a brisk speed when we rehearsed a few times and when we went for the final take. And that was because she was an artist who could keep pace and meet the level of involvement demanded by the script. I felt instantaneously comfortable with Mehboob Sahib. There are some people with whom one starts feeling relaxed and secure as though one has known them for ages. With Mehboob Sahib, it was the kind of comfort from day one. He gave me the freedom to talk to him about the way I wanted to perform a scene, and he let me show him how I intended to do it before he told me how he had visualized it. He liked healthy debates and believed that it was the end result that mattered, and the trivial question of whose idea it was had no relevance in teamwork. We held our meetings in Mehboob Sahab's house or at Naushad Mia's residence, and it was in such meeting that I disclosed my intention of switching over to comedy since I had been clinically advised to do so by one Dr. W.D. Nichols, who had been introduced to me by Dame Margaret Rutherford and Dame Sybil Thorndyke, with whom I had long discussions when I had met them through a drama coach in London. Dr. Nichols was kind enough to spend a good 1 hour with me when I called on him. I shared my fears with the eminent psychiatrist, and he assuaged me, saying it was not a cause for worry since many of his celebrity patients from the acting profession had come to him with the same fears, and he had told them what he was going to tell me. He suggested a quick change of the genre of films I was doing. He explained to me that most actors who repeatedly worked in the same genre of films found it difficult to overcome the dichotomy that confronted them between the two lives they were leading. The unreal sometimes, or rather most times, became so overpowering that the real life called for protection from caving in and getting submerged. I had been playing characters who were ill fated, and a morbid outlook had seized me as a result of my extreme involvement and my living the character beyond the working hours. Dr. Nichols said he was certain that I took my work home in my subconscious and turned the spoken lines and the scenes over and over in my mind in my bid to review the work I had done during the day. I was naturally appalled by his accuracy in diagnosing my condition. He added with the utmost seriousness, "My dear young man, you are not alone in this crisis. It is a similar condition that a student who gears himself for excellence and top ranking goes through. The only way out is to go for variety in your work. Spend more time in leisure that you enjoy or with friends you feel happy to be with." I understood what he meant. Indeed, I had got so involved in the work I was doing that I had unintentionally distanced myself from my brothers and sisters, seeing them only for a short time on returning home every night, and I had almost stopped playing football and cricket with my friends. It is not as if I did not realize that whatever I was doing in the films was unreal and diametrically opposite to my real life and my real self. But the situation was such that people came and talked about some of the tragic scenes I had done convincingly, or about a film that had attracted them to view it repeatedly because a death scene in it was beautifully performed, and that made me think about it even if I did not want to. It was good to hear the compliments, especially at a stage when one was in the process of evolving as an actor, but the impact was overwhelming to say the least. I was barely in my 20s and I was doing tragedy. Renowned tragedians in Western cinema like Sir John Gielgud, for example, had never done tragedy at such an early, impressionable age. They were in their 30s when they played tragic roles. I spoke at length, and I remember both Mehboob Saab and Naushad Mia just stared at me. They were unable to grasp my dilemma and my need to get a comforting approval from them. They thought I was crazy to go and seek advice from a psychiatrist and drama coaches in England. They named other actors who were sticking to the same genre and had no problem whatsoever. I went home somewhat distraught. The next day, I went over to meet S. Mukherjee Sahab and I told him I had seen a Tamil film which a producer from Madras had arranged for me to see. The producer Sri Ramul Naidu wanted to make it in Hindi and it meant a complete change of the screen image if I chose to do it. K. Asif, the director of the 1960 Mughal-e-Azam, also happened to be present when I was talking to Mukherjee Sahab and smiling provocatively, he said, "Karke dikhaiye, let us see you do it." Asif's look was like a gauntlet thrown down for me. Mukherjee Sahab had no second thoughts about the decision I was waiting to take. He said, "Go ahead and do it. An actor's business is acting, and it should not matter to him whether he is doing tragedy or comedy. What counts is the actor's ability and enterprise." I returned home with a feeling of confidence. I knew that comedy required a broad base and an exceptional sense of timing, which was a carefully honed skill more than a gift or flair. Initially, my fear was whether I possessed that skill. Now it was a challenge, a necessity that cried out for some daring on my part. Azad, released in 1955, in many ways was the film that gave me the much needed confidence to forge ahead with a feeling of emancipation and sense of achievement. I was in Mahabaleshwar, a hill station in Maharashtra, on the opening day, deliberately staying away from home and friends in Bombay. I was woken up by V.V. Puri Sahab at midnight and he was calling from Delhi to tell me the great news that the film was a hit. We kept congratulating each other till we hung up out of a sheer need to get some sound sleep. The delirious caller to wake me up early next morning was Sriramul Naidu, and I felt ever so happy for him because he had such confidence in me that he gave me absolute freedom to incorporate whatever ideas occurred to me to make the script and screenplay entertaining. It was also a pleasant experience working with Meena Kumari, for whom the film offered a welcome switchover to light-hearted acting from the serious acting she came to be known for with Baiju Bavara and Parinita. She was a sprightly person who got along very well with every member of the unit and enjoyed taking lessons in Tamil from Sriramul Naidu, who was forever on a Tamil instruction spree during the indoor shooting we did in Coimbatore and Madras. Naidu and I hit it off quite unexpectedly from the very first day of shooting. He was so happy about the start of the production that he insisted on hosting a lunch at a house in Madras which belonged to a wealthy Chettiar, that is, a business community, to introduce me to all the famous people he knew well in the southern film industry. The lunch was laid out for all the invitees on banana leaves as is customary in the south on festive occasions. It was the first time I was being treated to a typical South Indian meal served in four courses with three different desserts coming one after the other as the climax. After a whole series of vegetables were served on the leaf in an order that seemed fixed and unchangeable, a mound of rice was served in the middle of the leaf and sambar was added to it. I was seated next to a gentleman who had a beatific smile on his face and looked it upon himself to tell me in detail what each of the vegetable dishes was called in Tamil and how I should proceed from one dish to the other to get the right combinations. I did exactly as he instructed, not wanting to disappoint him and the host, Naidu, who was seated opposite me and engaged in an animated conversation with someone he seemed to know well. All was well till the rasam, which resembles a watery soup, came in a ladle, and the man who was serving stood anxiously by my side, directing a curious smile at me. I was at a loss and completely taken by surprise. I had seen my friend seated next to me take the rasam in his cupped palm ever so casually and slurp it down with relish. I was certain I could not manage that. As the man stood waiting for me to cup my palm and take a ladle full of tempting liquid soup, an idea crossed my mind. I made a small well in the rice mound, made a dam around it for safety and to arrest its flow, and asked him to pour it there. He obliged with a knowing smile, which I returned. I was pleased with myself for having artfully got out of a tricky situation and hastened to finish the meal. The real test, however, was yet to come. After the hearty meal, we retired to a drawing room where large sofas waited for the invitees to be seated as relaxingly as decency permits. There was a lot of chatter in Tamil and Telugu, and I could gather that they were all talking aloud about Naidu's madness to make the film in Hindi and court failure. Naidu had a sole ally in L.V. Prasad, a well known producer director from the south, who kept on speaking encouragingly and shaking his hand. All the invitees were polite and nice to me, though. The climax of the afternoon came when a large silver bowl arrived on a plate with a semi thick liquid in it. The valet who brought the bowl into the drawing room went from one invitee to the other, and I watched each of them take a scoop and rub it all over the belly, lifting up their shirts and then cover the smeared paste with the shirt back in its place as if there was nothing on the belly. I could distinctly get the fragrance of the sandalwood, so I knew it was nothing but sandalwood paste. I did not ask any questions when the bowl came to me. I took a scoop and smeared it on my hairy belly and decided to forget about it. But sure enough, it was not easy for me to forget about it. The paste began to dry up, and the hair on my belly was beginning to get taut and it was becoming painful for me. I could feel 100 pinpricks on my belly, and the discomfort was distracting. What does one do in such a perilous situation? I excused myself and headed straight for the washroom. I bolted the door and removed my shirt and vest. I soaked the vest in running water from the wash basin and wiped out the dried paste with it. The feel of cold water gave me a great relief. I saw an open window at the rear end of the large washroom overlooking a garden. I flung the vest out, wore my shirt, and returned triumphantly to the drawing room. No one there apparently noticed my absence, and no one came to know about the Chapliscu episode. The gardener certainly would have wondered the next day about the bundled vest he would have found beneath one of the bushes, and he would have dismissed it as someone's mischief. I did not feel the need to tell Naidu about the episode. I tried to avoid formal lunches and dinners after that, and Naidu imagined it was the language problem, perhaps, that deterred me from participating in such social activities. In truth, it was quite the contrary. I discovered a latent flair in me to assimilate both Tamil and Telugu as speedily as I had learned Bengali from Ashok Bhaiya and S. Mukherjee Sahab. Besides, all the wonderful people I came to know in southern cinema capital were capable of speaking English with adequate fluency. If I presented myself with my first car after the success of Shabnam, Ajad's success, which gave me a true sense of achievement, made me think about having my own residence in the city, which was carving a very special place in my heart as my homeland, even transcending my sentimental attachment to my birthplace, Peshawar, in the northwest frontier. It had been my earnest desire to give Amma the security and comfort of being in a house that she could call her own when she was alive. Her health had been failing, and she had to willy nilly let go of the management of the household, which Sakina Appa took over happily. As already mentioned, in temperament and attitude, Sakina Appa was more like my Dadi, whose Hitlerian authority pervaded the house administration in Peshawar. I had no doubt that my elder sister's high handedness was what psychologists call learned behavior. But then the logical question was, why did she not learn from Amma's gentle and kind behavior? I guess some questions are best left unanswered. Memories are hard to erase from the mind. Often, when I was alone in my room, I recalled how on most evenings I returned to my house after a day's exacting work to find Amma struggling with her asthmatic cough and feigning to be well. She had been extremely concerned about Ayub Sahab's deteriorating health condition. Ayub Sahab, she knew, was the closest to me among my brothers. So she had never failed to ask me curious questions about Ayub Sahab's lung functioning, which had been impaired since he fell from a horse. I was aware how much she missed him when he passed away. I could not forget how Amma used to look up at me when I would tiptoe to her room after I had bathed and changed. She would beckon to me with her beautiful eyes, and I would take my usual place at the bedstead so that she could rest her head on my chest while I talked soothingly to her. When she would be fatigued with her effort of breathing, I helped her to breathe effortlessly by giving support to her ribs, pressing with hand support, then letting go. Sometimes, when she wanted to get up and sit on a chair in the room, I just carried her in my arms, amidst protests and gentle laughter from her, and placed her in the chair. My eldest brother, Noor Sahab, was forever in the company of his friends. My younger brothers were busy with their studies, and so were my younger sisters. They had Sakina Appa's watchful eye over them, and they had been so disciplined by her that if they wanted something, they dared not approach me directly, as it annoyed Appa, who had made herself the sole authority in the house. My aunts too feared her and made uncomplimentary remarks behind her back. The open person who did not treat her with awe was Chacha Umar. He made all sorts of harmless and jolly remarks about the heroines I worked with, much to Appa's irritation. Every time he mischievously suggested matrimony for me with one of the ladies I teamed with, she either politely asked him to go and find himself something to do, or she stormed out of the room indignantly. I sensed that she disapproved of most of the actresses I was working with, though she was very civil and cordial when they visited our home. I felt that she got along well with Nargis, whose mother, Jaddabai, was very fond of me and affectionately addressed me as Prince. It amused me when Appa asked me one evening whether I knew what was going on between Raj Kapoor and Nargis. I told her that she should ask Raj Kapoor, who used to drop in unexpectedly and make his presence felt in our quiet house by talking to everyone and demanding the aromatic milkless tea that Appa made specially for him. It was not in my nature to intrude into anyone's personal life. Interestingly, Asif had wanted me to play Prince Salim in a project we had started way back when I was working in Nadia Ki Par. He had invited me over to his house and introduced me to his wife, the Kathak danceress Sitara Devi, with whom an instant rapport developed as we talked about classical Hindustani music and dance forms. As our conversation progressed and she had served us tea and snacks, Sitara Bai hesitatingly asked me if she could call me Bhaijan, that is brother, as she felt a sisterly affection for me. Asif remained quiet and observant while Sitara Bai talked seamlessly about dance, music, films, weather, food, servants, and what have you. Finally, Asif got a chance to get in a word. He said he liked everything about me, but he felt I was rather too young to play Prince Salim at that juncture. He remarked, "You have the royal bearing of a prince, but I want an older look." I told him he was right. Rather prophetically, he then declared that in the future he would make a film relating the love story of Salim and Anarkali on a scale that would inspire awe, and he would cast me as the romantic prince. I was somewhat amused by his overweening sense of supreme confidence, but I had enough sense not to reveal my amusement. He announced the film shortly with D.K. Sarpooji, the lead, but due to financial curbs, he could not go beyond a few reels. So, when he approached me years later with the proposal of Mughal-e Azam, It was like a dream come true for him. I had by then moved up the echelons of stardom, and our friendship and my fraternal ties with Sarita Devi had continued uninterrupted despite there being no talk of work between us. Then, one day, he came to meet me with a twinkle in his eyes, and after the usual pleasantries, he began to recall our first meeting and he reminded me of the promise he had made to himself to film the story of Anarkali and Prince Salim on a scale of grandeur and opulence that would inspire awe, and I would play the prince. I remembered the episode vividly and could not help marveling at the ways of destiny. I worked on Salim's personality by fine tuning my instincts appropriately to create a screen persona who closely matched the descriptions I read in some fine books I got hold of in the Anjuman Islam School library. I could always depend on my friend Muhammad Umar Mukri, a short stature character actor, to help me out on such occasions. He rummaged through bookshops and got me whatever he could lay his hands on. To cut the story short, I think I more or less succeeded in approximating my get up and screen persona of Prince Salim to the picture I had formed in my mind. I knew at the very start of the project that I was not going to get much help from Asif. He had numerous concerns to deal with as the director, and in his typical manner, he laughed away my worries, saying, "Just be yourself, your Prince Yusuf."